Wide receiver is probably the most important position to master in fantasy football. So let's look at some data from last year and the year before on how people drafted wide receivers in their fantasy leagues. We're looking at the advance rate above or below average in underdog best ball drafts. And again, best ball, it translates to fantasy because in these top 6-7 rounds, you're always starting your studs, right?
The best player.
And so we looked at these nice, pretty red and white and green tables here. Let's go ahead and look at them for 2022 and 2023, and let's see what we can see, Nathan. I'll let you start this one off.
Okay, yeah. So 2022, to me, it's pretty clear-cut and dry. Like, there's only one, in the amount of times I've said clear-cut and dry the last few videos, I just noticed it's starting to drive myself insane, so I'm not going to say it again. Pretty clear cut and dry. You really get the late first being like the best place to take wide receivers in 2022, right? That's where the highest advance rate was. There's a little bit of a surge there at the end of the second, but other than that, it was pretty average, honestly. Like, everyone was pretty much being drafted accordingly in the ranges past the second round. Seriously. Yeah. So there's not really much to take away from there. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of a trend when you combine 2022 and 2023. Look at 2023. Same thing. End of the first round, beginning of the second this time. It kind of bled into the beginning of the second, but mainly the end of the first round. Other than that, I don't really see any trends between 2022 and 2023. The biggest point is that you can't really go wrong. We talked about this, touched on this a bit in the running back video, but you can't really go wrong with taking wide receiver at the end of the first round this year. Yes, I feel like at some point, water's going to find its level. I feel like at some point, the pendulum is going to have to swing back to the running back side where the league winners, the biggest league winners, are going to be the running backs. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I would just assume that will eventually happen, but that doesn't mean that any of these wide receivers going in this range in 2024 aren't going to be good values based on the historical data that we've seen, which is very proven over the last couple of years. And to me, in 2023, I really want to look at what went on here and kind of see some specific players that went in certain ranges beyond even the late first round and see if we can't find different team situations that kind of fit that build and could be potential league winners this year or advance rate winners.
I agree. So let's break it all down, and let's start with that late first. This year, going in the late first, you've got Puka Nacua, you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Garrett Wilson, you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., you've got Drake London. Those are the 5 guys. I'll be honest with you, I like my chances with almost every single one of those receivers, but especially if you're getting Puka Nacua from picks 9 to 12. I think he's the guy this year that's going to make the end of that round on next year's positional heat. I think he's going to be making it green. But I also like A.J. Brown. You know what you're getting with A.J. Brown. Drake London has that upside. Marvin Harrison Jr., he's a rookie, and what we've learned is drafting rookies in the first round of these drafts can be really risky, but it's not to say that he doesn't have the talent to do it, nor the situation. It's just saying that you're drafting him to be the cornerstone of your team. But that being said, yes, individual players can have sway on these graphs, but acting like, and we had people act like this in the running back video, and it just is.
It's not true.
It's not true that one player was affecting the entire end of the first, into the second, like both years.
Yes, last year CeeDee Lamb majorly contributed to the success rate at the end of the first round because that's kind of the range where he was going. But so did A.J. Brown, and so did Amon-Ra St. Brown, also going in that range.
Yes, exactly.
Like Stephon Diggs.
And so did Diggs.
Stephon Diggs' fall off, again, didn't really happen until the latter half of the season. He was very, very productive for the first half of the season, which counts towards your playoff advance rate. A lot of people probably made the playoffs because of Stephon Diggs' first half of the season.
Yeah.
Like that is a fact. Garrett Wilson, disappointment. Devontae Adams did exactly what you expected. Drafted as a wide receiver 9, ended up being the wide receiver 10. He had a good beginning of the season, good end of the season, the middle not so good. Waddle sucked compared to expectations that you had for him. Olave also sucked. So really, the big ones that didn't hit here were Waddle, Olave, and Garrett Wilson.
All going like team 8 through team 3 in the second round, where you see it average out to White there. But again, even this is what that proves to you. Even in the second round, where you are picking wide receivers that don't necessarily pan out, it's far better than picking a running back that doesn't pan out. Picking a running back that doesn't pan out actually hurts you.
It will ruin you.
Picking a wide receiver that doesn't pan out, it pretty much just gives you an average chance of making the playoffs, an
Yeah.
average chance of advancing in the playoffs. And so that's what you see here with wide receivers. I want to
generally the upside of a running back that hits in later rounds is higher than the upside of a wide receiver that technically hits in later rounds.
And when you're defining a wide receiver bust, there's a lot higher floor for that than there is a running back bust.
Yeah.
A running back bust sucks. A wide receiver, like you're talking about Chris or even Jalen Waddle being a wide receiver bust, like being a wide receiver too. You can still win even if you missed and he's still a wide receiver too.
Yeah.
Like that's absolutely true. And so again, I want to highlight, I think Puka Nacua, I think AJ Brown are two guys this year late in your fantasy drafts in the late first round that I want to be building my teams around, particularly Puka Nacua. Like I will be drafting and building around Puka Nacua in those late rounds as much as possible. I think the target insulation, the yak ability that he was able to show, the role he's able to have on that offense, not to mention is baked into his price tag. They think Cooper Kupp is going to affect him. And he's a guy, Puka Nacua, that was 5th in fantasy points among non-quarterback players last year.
Yeah.
So I think that's how you apply that to this year. But let's move to kind of the late 4th, early 5th here.
Yeah, that was another hot spot that we saw in 2023. And in fairness to you guys, like this is definitely one of those ranges where it was impacted by one player drafted in that range, and that one player was Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was a guy that in fantasy last year we weren't necessarily the highest on because there's a lot of competition there, but he ended up being very productive, ended up being a wide receiver 1 when he was out there and playing. I think the big point to know here is that opportunity and volume doesn't always mean fantasy production on bad offenses, because there were a ton of wide receivers going around this range that technically had more target opportunity than Brandon Ayuk, but ended up being way, way less productive. I'm thinking Deontay Johnson, case in point, in this range. And when you're looking at this year, who are some of the wide receivers going around there? George Pickens, who we've talked about in a positive light, in fairness, but not the best situation.
No,
Amari Cooper, proven to be productive the last couple years in Cleveland's offense, despite the quarterback situation. Christian Kirk no longer around Calvin Ridley, which is nice. Christian Kirk was going in this range last year as well with Calvin Ridley in that offense. Now he's gone.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, and Hollywood Brown. So I think those are some interesting wide receivers to kind of keep an eye on. I mean, if you see all those wide receivers that I just listed in 2024, which one do you think would be this year's Brandon Ayuk? Like, if you were to be a guessing.
Dang, that's a loaded question.
It's Amari Cooper for me, hands down.
Yeah, from a points perspective, yes, I could see it being Amari Cooper. Of those guys you listed, I probably would need to go up to pick mine. I think it could be Michael Pittman again, because he's going as the wide receiver 24 right now.
Yeah.
And he's going at the like middle of the third, end of the third, actually. He's going into the third. You have guys like DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Devonta Smith, Malik Neighbors going there. I don't really think there's a clear-cut candidate. The main thing with Brandon Ayuk was he was the second wide receiver being drafted from that offense. And that was the only reason you were getting him that cheap. And so looking at guys like that, Jalen Waddle is going, but Jalen Waddle's still going end of the second. His ADP's 22. So with that, like, I think he could be that guy, but he's overpriced to be that guy. So by default, he can't be. So whether somebody has that or not this year, I'm not sure. It's more the fact that targeting wide receiver 2s in elite passing offenses always going to be better than shooting for volume and opportunity and targeting wide receiver 1s in bad offenses.
Yeah.
So.
And who's your big exception here from last year? It's Adam Thielen, right? But Adam Thielen, his risk was so high, but his price was so low. He had so much volume and opportunity, but he was going, in the 9th round? Or was
Thielen,
it later, the
13th.
10th or 11th?
He was going like the 13th.
Seriously? It was that late?
Yes.
No way.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't stop taking him there at that price because the opportunity was there. There is always a price point where you want to take opportunity for sure. But when you're looking in these early rounds, like that's not when you want to be taking the shots. 8th round is another notable cold sore that we saw.
Interestingly enough, well, the 8th round actually in 2022 was a cold spot as well. The 9th and 10th were better in 2022, but they were bad in 2023. So this range is kind of, I don't think that you could say that there are any clear trends in the data here. It's just more speculation at this point. But last year in particular was pretty interesting.
Yeah, Sky Moore, Quentin Johnston, Elijah Moore, Treylon Burks, Kadarius Toney, and Michael Thomas. To me, what I see is a bunch of unproven wide receiver 2s. I'd even include Michael Thomas at this point in his career because he's as unproven as any of them because he's so far removed from his hyper production. And then they really are all wide receiver twos. Like some people did predict maybe Sky Moore would be the wide receiver 1 behind Travis Kelce. That's essentially a wide receiver 2. And QJ, unproven rookie, very raw. Elijah Moore, never proven anything. Burks, never proven anything. We bought the hype there. Kadarius Toney, a lot of people loved his athletic upside there, never proven anything. It didn't matter what situation they were in, whether it was good, whether it was bad. It just didn't work out for any of these guys.
Yeah.
So
and guys this year that are fitting that mold almost to a T. Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston going in the same range here. Jamison Williams.
Jamison Williams
example.
is a huge one.
And Jamison Williams is a guy already. And some guys are just like this.
He's unproven, and there's a ridiculous amount of target competition as well. Like, even if Jamison Williams ends up being what Detroit wants him to be, that's still a deep threat.
And with Jamison Williams, he's a guy that is going to continually move up fantasy football ranks just because of Twitter hype, just because of training camp hype.
Yeah.
We've done this before, guys. J-Mo, Khalil Shakir, this is a volume thing. It's a good offense, but we know what Khalil Shakir is. Curtis Samuel, same thing. Same offense. We know what they are.
Guys, if you want to learn a lesson from the Kansas City Chiefs offense in 2023, look no further than the Buffalo Bills of 2024. They are going to look dang near the same. They're going to be run first. They're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. They're going to throw the ball to Dalton Kincaid.
And they're not necessarily going to have a top 15 to 18 producing wide receiver.
No. Generally what we found, and we did this in our wide receiver research, the Stats Don't Lie video that was super cool, talking about some opportunity, and we found that talent always outweighs opportunity in an offense. So you're not going to see a guy who's, you know what Shakir is, you're not going to see a guy like him end up being a high-end wide receiver too. From a fantasy perspective, you're more going to see like 50% of Josh Allen's passing attempts going to a bunch of fantasy irrelevant guys based off of the data that we've seen.
And the talent will rise to the top. And who's the most talented pass catcher in Buffalo?
Kincaid.
Easily. So for us, like, it's not like, okay, it has to be a wide receiver because there's vacated volume. It's like the most talented guy there. Kincaid is a big slot. He will be used as a big slot, and he's going to command a lot of targets, and he's going to be good in the red zone. People think that we're insane for how highly we think of Dalton Kincaid, and the fact that we said we'd take him as our tight end 3. He's tight end 5 on Underdog right now. He's tight end 5 or 6, 7 on ESPN Yahoo. So I don't think it's crazy. I mean, again, I'm avoiding these wide receivers that we know are unproven, that we know haven't done anything, and that are odds are they're not going to be that productive this year. And I'm going to take better shots. And honestly, like a lot of times with 8th round, 9th round, that becomes running backs. Because you can get cheaper running backs in this range that have enough of a split in their workload to where they're either getting some touchdowns, like David Montgomery is, or they're getting some receptions, like somebody like Aaron Jones is. And I think that's why you saw that range last year. And then the other thing that we saw pretty consistently in this data as we wrap up is the wide receivers passed around like 12. Every single wide receiver that hit big from there, almost every single one of them, with the exception of Rashid Shaheed and Adam Thielen, they were all rookies.
They were rookies.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
So if you're really going to take shots on wide receivers past round 13 or 14, you're taking shots on rookies. Last year, you're talking about guys, obviously guys like Puka Nacua, but guys like Rashee Rice and Jaden Reed are better examples of this, right? They're guys that you were able to consistently flex in fantasy football and guys you were getting super duper late. Ended up being waiver guys in a lot of like drafts where you're only drafting 12, 13 players. You're talking about, I'm trying to think, there was another rookie on there last year that I can't remember who it was, but this year, let's just talk about this year. Past like the 12th, 13th round this year. Xavier Legette.
Jaden Reed was going in that range too.
I said Jaden Reed.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
And Jaden Reed.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Jaden Reed.
Xavier Legette going really late this year, a guy that could step in and, it's not about volume there. It's about he could end up being the most talented pass catcher. Jalen Polk, Malachi Corley, Jermaine Burton, Javon Baker. All 5 of those guys are guys, rookies, that if you're going to take shots on wide receivers later in rounds, take shots on those rookies because historically, it's really shown that it'll prove off. And again, most of the veterans you end up drafting there, most of them don't end up panning out. I think there are definitely safer picks, but when you're going for upside, especially in best ball, you're definitely going to be going for some rookies there.
Yeah,
especially ones that can get.
And all those guys that we mentioned too have, with the exception of Burton, a direct avenue to immediate production as well.
Yes.
And it kind of is, we're past the point in that range of drafting in fantasy where we're betting on our own evaluation of their talent and can they or can they not produce, we that's when we do care about opportunity.
Sure.
And I'll do you one better with taking rookies in the late rounds. I'll take it further and say I would pass up on the more expensive rookies going in the earlier rounds as well. We just saw this last year with JSN, with Quentin Johnson, with even Zay Flowers to an extent, like in his price. Addison, even though he outproduced expectations, like none of them were insane league winners or anything like that in fantasy because they were just being drafted too high. And I know the talent of this year's rookie class, especially at the wide receiver position, is very, very high. But look at their price. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. as a rookie wide receiver, not even a running back, a rookie wide receiver, incredible talent, going to a great situation, is being drafted as a wide receiver 9 at the tail end of the first, beginning of the second. Same range as A.J. Brown, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk, like Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, all of these guys. And Malik Neighbors going at the tail end of the second, beginning of the third on a horrible offense. I mean, we just talked about take elite players in really good offenses instead of players that you're not so sure about in their production and bad offenses. It's about the price in the early rounds especially. I'm not going to go out there and say that I think the guys in the later round like Leggett, Polk, Corley, Burton, and Baker are going to outproduce Neighbors and Odunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. We're not in the business of doing that, and I honestly think it would be foolish and stupid for us to predict that. But if you're getting 75% of the points in the 12th or 13th round that Neighbors and Harrison are going to get you in the second round, heck, 50% of the points, you're getting more of a win and probably more of a chance of getting close to the playoffs and maybe even winning your league if you invest in those players at a cheaper price in the later round.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And so again, just like with the running back video, you can take anything you want from this. You cannot take anything you want. I don't think you can say that the data here is it's objective. Like this is factual truth that happened. Like I don't understand how people get so upset about it. But if you play fantasy football, make sure you subscribe for us. That really helps us out. Make sure you drop a like on the video. Those two things, they take you 5 seconds to scroll down. 1, 2. Those two things help Nathan and I out so much, and it's going to help us build this channel. We'd really love if you did those two things for us. We appreciate you guys watching today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you later.